Hello and welcome to Invest in America, Business and Resources. We'll be starting shortly. Thank you so much. Awesome, let's go ahead and get started. A few housekeeping items to review prior to the webinar begins. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A. The U.S. Small Business Administration does not endorse Public-Private Strategies Institute. This session is being live streamed and recorded. And please do not share any personal information in the Q&A function. Without further ado, I have the honor to introduce Senior Advisor Renee Johnson.
Hello, everybody. We are so excited to have each of you here for the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, of course, webinar series, Invest in America, Small Business Tools and Resources. Today, we'll be celebrating Pride and Caribbean Heritage Month, while also uplifting resources business owners and leaders can utilize from recent legislation to help businesses thrive in today's economy. Now I have the honor to introduce Hannah Bristol, who is the Senior Advisor at the White House Office of Public Engagement. Hannah Bristol is a Senior Advisor in the White House Office of Public Engagement, working with young people, the LGBTQ+ community, and on gun violence prevention. She grew up in Virginia, where she started volunteering on political campaigns in high school and has been organizing young people ever since. She has worked on many different administrations and as well at Next Gen America. Most recently, she was the National Young Americans Engagement Director, and we're so excited to have her today on this webinar. So without further ado, turning it over to Hannah for some brief remarks and updates.
Thank you so much, Renee, and thank you all for having me here today. As Renee said, my name is Hannah Bristol, and I use she, her pronouns. I work in the White House Office of Public Engagement, and happy Pride Month to everybody. And, you know, today is also the anniversary of Stonewall, so it's a privilege to be able to talk to you all today about the work that the administration has done to advance equality for LGBTQI+ people, especially today as we remember the importance of knowing our LGBTQI+ history and all of the work that has happened to get us to this point. So in celebration of Pride Month, the Biden-Harris administration announced earlier this month a handful of new actions to protect the LGBTQI+ community from attacks on their rights and safety. As I know many of you all know, over a dozen states have enacted anti-LGBTQI+ laws that violate our most basic values and freedoms as Americans and are cruel and callous to our kids, neighbors, and those in our community. And the administration is proud to be the most pro-equality administration and has the backs of the LGBTQI+ community in the face of these attacks. So earlier this month, in advance of the largest ever Pride Month celebration held at the White House, we announced some actions that are protecting the LGBTQI+ community from attacks on their rights and safety by launching a new LGBTQI+ community safety partnership and announcing that the Assistant Attorney General of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department will serve as the department's liaison to the LGBTQI+ community on issues related to protecting the rights of the community. These actions also are related to supporting LGBTQI+ kids so they can thrive by strengthening mental health resources for LGBTQI+ youth, launching a new federal initiative to address LGBTQI+ youth homelessness, and releasing federal funding to support programs that help parents affirm their LGBTQI+ kids and advance new regulations to protect LGBTQI+ youth in foster care. The last piece of these announcements is shielding LGBTQI+ Americans from book bans that threaten their rights by announcing that the Department of Education will appoint a new coordinator to address the growing threat of that book bans pose for civil rights of students. These actions build on many actions that have been announced by the administration over the past 2.5 years to protect the community. A lot of these actions are centered on things like protecting LGBTQI+ kids and their parents from state attacks on their rights. And this includes an executive order that the president signed last year during Pride on advancing equality for LGBTQI+ individuals. We also have done a lot of work to strengthen civil rights protection, and this includes signing the Respect for Marriage Act to protect same-sex and interracial marriage in December, and continuing to fight for the passage of the Equality Act, advancing the health equity of LGBTQI+ Americans, supporting transgender service members and veterans, ensuring transgender Americans have access to accurate IDs and vital government services, and addressing violence against LGBTQI+ individuals, and continuing to advance LGBTQI+ equality around the world, including through a presidential memorandum on advancing the human rights of LGBTQI+ persons around the world that the president issued 2 years ago. This week, we have also had a lot of activity happen from folks across the administration. The First Lady joined Pride festivals in Minneapolis and Nashville this weekend, and the Vice President was at Stonewall on Monday. So we are really thrilled to have had folks, to be able to bring folks into the White House, and also to have had folks from the administration traveling and engaging with the community across the country. So thank you all so much for everything that you do to protect and advocate for our LGBTQI+ people, to support LGBTQI+ small businesses. Thank you all for having me here, and happy Pride.
Thank you so much, Hannah. So many amazing, great things that the administration is doing. We thank you for ensuring that business owners are included in making sure they're able to thrive. Now we're going to hear from Otis Raleigh, Head of Philanthropic and Community Impact at Wells Fargo and Company and President of the Wells Fargo Foundation. Otis is the head of the Philanthropic and Community Impact at Wells Fargo and Company and President of the foundation, which is one of the largest corporate foundations in the United States. At Wells Fargo, Otis guides the strategic vision behind the company's social impact strategies, with an emphasis on housing affordability, small business growth, financial health, and a low carbon future. Prior to joining the company, Otis was the Senior Vice President at the U.S. Equity and Economic Opportunity Initiative at the Rockefeller Foundation. Otis directed all U.S. work focused on enhancing the ability of every working person to meet the basic financial needs of their family and have a path to a better future. Centering racial and gender equity, Otis provided stewardship for U.S. grant making and investing aligned to filling key U.S. economic opportunity gaps in tax and budget policy design and implementation, access to capital and asset ownership, and worker coalition building and advocacy. And we're so grateful for him to be here today. And with that, I turn it over to Otis.
Thank you so much, Renee. I'm really honored to be here during Pride and Caribbean American Heritage Month to celebrate all of our country's LGBTQ and Caribbean entrepreneurs who provide essential services and jobs to our communities. Helping small businesses persevere and navigate the ups and downs of entrepreneurship is a major focus for Wells Fargo. And as one of the nation's largest banks, we work with millions of small business owners every day through our business and philanthropy. I'm particularly personally excited to have an opportunity to share with you today as a Guyanese American, as a gay African American, recognizing that during this month, we are doing so much and have consistently done so much to really try to strengthen the entrepreneurship ecosystem, and the recognition that the more participants that are actively engaged, the better our overall economy is. We at Wells Fargo, we're committed to providing resources to help bring more small businesses from marginalized communities into entrepreneurship, and giving them the support and access that they need to grow their businesses and make an even bigger economic impact in their communities. We support small businesses in 4 key areas, and we provide examples of each of these for you. Strengthening CDFIs, access to flexible capital and technical expertise, growing underrepresented founders and creating new pathways to credit, growing businesses and bringing more profitability. And first and foremost, strengthening CDFIs. We've collaborated with CDFIs for more than 2 decades. CDFIs are an important part of the financial services ecosystem and play a critical role in deploying capital to small businesses, particularly with the history of those businesses with a history of underrepresentation. Over the last 10-year period, Wells Fargo has provided more than $2.6 billion in funding to CDFIs across the country. And we provide CDFIs with grant funding as well, flexible, non-restrictive capital, allowing CDFIs to better adapt their balance sheets and more effectively serve small businesses. And it's important also to recognize that we do a lot around access to flexible capital and technical expertise. It's important for small businesses to understand the full spectrum of resources that are out there, and many options to find the right one for them, and as they're trying to navigate what can be a really complicated and trying ecosystem. For example, we have the Small Business Resource Navigator. Sometimes people are trying to approach large banks and just don't know how to get the kind of loan that they need and the right loan size. They need help negotiating and understand the terms that they need. We, through our efforts, have tried to, with the Small Business Resource Navigator, to really help small businesses to understand how and where we can connect with them. We provide a compliant way for CSBB bankers to refer credit declines to CDFIs to access capital, so that even when we are not necessarily able to connect and help them and serve them directly, that we are able to match them to a CDFI that makes sense for them. We're also trying to grow underrepresented founders. Women and women of color in particular are opening up small businesses at rates much faster than their peers. And we try to offer more for them in terms of really providing resources to their network and accelerating their success trajectory. One of the ways that we're doing this is to Connect to More. Connect to More program launched in 2021 to support the success and sustainability of women-owned businesses through access to expertise, mentorship, and specialized resources. And finally, creating new pathways to growing your business and being more profitable. And it's really important for small business owners to understand and build profitability. And so we're trying, through our partnerships with Silver Lining and Latino Business Action Network, both offer ways to build a business plan, revenue goals, and be more profitable. We do all this work because we recognize that the heartbeat of the American economy are small businesses and entrepreneurs. And we're just so excited about the work that we have done, that we are doing, and that we want to continue to do to really support this ecosystem. So thanks so much for the opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing, what we have done, and what we hope to do in partnership with each and every one of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Otis. We truly appreciate the amazing work you have done to help business owners across the country. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now we're going to turn to Justin Nelson, who is the co-founder and president of the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, also known as NGLCC, which is the business voice of the LGBT community and the largest LGBT economic advocacy and business development organization in the world. In addition to over 50 LGBT affiliate chambers in the United States representing America's 1.4 million LGBT business owners, NGLCC leads economic development opportunities at over 20 international affiliates. NGLCC is responsible for major victories for the LGBT business community, among them the first in the nation inclusion of LGBT suppliers and statewide contracting opportunities with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Justin regularly advises senior leaders at the White House and Congress and corporations throughout the world to build business opportunities through commitments to LGBT inclusive supplier diversity programs. He is a sought-after speaker at conferences, and we're excited to have him here today. So without further ado, Justin, I turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you, Renee. Appreciate that very kind introduction. As Renee mentioned, I'm Justin Nelson, co-founder and president here at the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I use he, him pronouns, and if you happen to be tuning in and have a visual impairment or a visual disability, I am a middle-aged white gay man with a mustache and a beard. I am in a blue shirt, and I have a red brick background behind me. I want to thank our friends at PPS and the Small Business Administration for today's event, but even more so for the work that you continue to do throughout the year to empower diverse business communities, including the LGBTQ business community. It is something that is very important to me, both organizationally and personally, because I'm a firm believer that you can't have equality if you don't have equity, and you can't have equity if you don't have opportunity. And that is the name of the game for my organization. Our main purpose is to empower, grow, and help scale LGBTQ-owned businesses. And we do that through a number of ways, working with now more than 450 multinational corporate partners. I was so glad to see Otis as a part of today's program, because Wells Fargo was our second founding corporate partner now 20 years ago. And we have been able to build some amazing programming. In addition to what Otis mentioned, we also do a number of programs that are anchored by support from Wells Fargo, including our XLR8, our Accelerate program, which is a leadership and capacity building program for LGBT-owned businesses to grow and scale their enterprise. We're also the exclusive third-party certifying body for LGBT-owned companies. That means if you are an LGBT-owned firm that is at least 51% LGBT owned by one person or more of the LGBTQ plus community, you are eligible to be certified and become a part of the diverse supply chain of those 450 multinational corporate partners that we work with. And this is not just small opportunity, this is major opportunity. Billions, literally with a B, have been spent with LGBT-owned companies. Not despite the fact that you're LGBTQ owned, but because you are, because corporations want to ensure that their customer and employee base mirrors their supply base, and their supply base mirrors their customer and employee base. So we've been working for a number of years to bring these opportunities to your business. If you are an LGBTQ owned business and you're not certified, you need to be, and you can do that a number of ways. As Renee mentioned, we work with now 54 affiliate chambers across the US. So chances are you have one in your community or very close by. And not only is that your conduit to certification, but it's also your opportunity to find other LGBTQ and allied owned businesses that are looking to do business with companies like yours. And we encourage you to do that. Obviously, we're so proud of the work we do with the Small Business Administration. Administrator Guzman, you all don't need me to tell you this, but we have the most LGBTQ inclusive administration in our history. And along with that, we have the most pro-LGBTQ administrator ever at the U.S. Small Business Administration. And I am so honored to sit on the Administrators Council on Underserved Communities. That brings together underrepresented groups to identify and advise on measures that the SBA may want to take to be more inclusive in their programs and initiatives. And I'm certainly not going to steal the associate administrator's thunder, but I am going to tell you we are so proud to have supported the updating of regulations that have now put more lenders into the network, especially lenders around micro loans, whether you're seeking a 504 or 7A, a number of LGBTQ enterprises, as many of you know, are micro enterprises, solopreneurs, and are looking for small, far smaller loans than what some of those other guarantee programs offer. I'm pleased to say that we were proud to support the updating of this regulation, and I know the associate administrator will talk more about these issues. A couple of words of advice, because many of you have probably seen the recent survey that was out around the difficulty for LGBTQ-owned businesses to find financing and capital to start or grow their enterprise. The reality is, as Hannah mentioned quite eloquently at the outset of this conversation, we have a number of locations around this country that are progressively working to and aggressively working to limit the rights and opportunities of LGBTQ plus people in our country. Obviously, there are states in our nation where discrimination is out in full force, and that absolutely impacts a business's ability to seek and identify funding. And I want to tie that back to our network of affiliates. Please visit www.nglcc.org. Click on our affiliates tab and find the one closest to you, because chances are they have relationships with local and regional banks that are looking to do business with companies like yours. I'd also invite you to take a look at our corporate partners page, where you'll see companies like Wells Fargo, like JP Morgan Chase, like Truist, that have all created divisions within their organizations to now service and actively court diverse communities, including LGBTQ communities, in terms of business banking relationships. These are companies that you can trust. You can reach out to my office and we can help you identify a business banker that may be in your neighborhood. And again, one final plug: if you're an LGBTQ-owned business and you're looking to do business with companies, everything from travel and leisure to aerospace to technology and everything in between, We now work with over 450 that are looking for companies like yours and are contracting with companies like yours. And that's incredibly important. So during Pride Month, it's exciting to take a moment and pause and celebrate our accomplishments, to be mindful of where our history has brought us, and to be cognizant of the challenges that lie before us. But we really do have to work together with one another to empower our businesses. And that's what today's program is about. So happy Pride, and thank you so much to PPS and the Small Business Administration. I'll turn it back to you, Renee.
Thank you, Justin. And again, thank you so much for your commitment to making business owners across the country have additional resources and support that they need so that they can thrive. Now I'm going to turn to Justin Nelson. We just heard from Justin, to Francisco Sanchez Jr., who is the Associate Administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration's SBA Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience, also known as ODR&R. He was appointed by President Biden, making him the first non-banker and presidential appointee to hold this position. In his role, Francisco is responsible for elevating the priority of business and economic recovery by revamping the agency's disaster enterprise to better support America's 33 million small businesses, renters, and homeowners, providing them with the necessary resources to weather any storm and emerge stronger than ever. And with that, I turn it over to you, Francisco.
Thank you, Renee, for that kind introduction. And on the anniversary of Stonewall, happy Pride. That is an emergency manager. It's also the start of hurricane season. As the highest ranking LGBT appointee from Texas, I was proud to be the special guest at Houston's Pride and Luncheon, Pride and Business Luncheon hosted by the Houston LGBT Chamber, a record-breaking event deep in the heart of Texas. With more than 600 anti-LGBT bills across the country attacking freedom, SBA is supporting our LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs in every community. The direct attacks to deny us the full American promise also deny America of her full potential. So the SBA Administrator Isabella Casillas Guzman and the Biden-Harris administration stand proudly with you. Together, we can grow the more than 2 million LGBTQ plus businesses that contribute more than $1.7 trillion annually to our national economy. So while we celebrate Pride Month, we honor and invest in you every day. Grateful to be on the program today with the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, the Wells Fargo Foundation. And as we experience and help grow the small business boom that's generating prosperity, 10.5 million applications for new small businesses in the past 2 years. Here at the Office of Recovery and Resilience, we're working to protect that prosperity by helping businesses to prepare, to recover, and to be more resilient for the disasters they're going to face in the future. As Justin mentioned, some of our fundamental strategies at SBA and how we're infusing the smallest of the small businesses and our underserved entrepreneurs with capital is critical for their success. But as we take on these innovative measures, how do we protect that progress in the face of climate change? So that's the challenge here. You can move on to the next slide. We've done some incredible work since we started this journey in January of last year. We've undertaken the greatest transformation of our response to disasters at the SBA in our agency's history. We've gone from the Office of Disaster Assistance to the Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience, not only in name, but also in how we operate. You may not know, SBA is often the first and only federal agency on the ground in the wake of most disasters. In fact, since the year 2000, there have only been 3 years where there have been more major presidentially declared disasters than there have been SBA agency disasters. And so we're also uniquely positioned as the only federal agency that to this scale and scope can help homeowners, businesses, renters, and private nonprofits. So that is a little bit of the sense of what we do. And sworn in January of last year, since we have done these changes just in the past year alone, we have responded to 18 separate billion-dollar plus disasters across this country. $5 billion in the first 2 years the administration approved for us to help disaster survivors on the ground. This year alone, 152 disaster declarations throughout this country. Probably another 2 by tomorrow, as I'm seeing the things coming along. So this is a historic time for hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, and snowstorms. So as we're propelling this prosperity, we're trying to protect that. So in terms of what we're trying to do, we've done some historic changes. This slide sort of is the first major realignment that we had last year, which is right people, right jobs. We took a lot of the lessons from COVID in our lending program, and for the disaster lending program was the only part of SBA that was doing direct lending to businesses. We learned some of the lessons from COVID and our banking partners, and we took those and we moved the direct lending that we did here at Office of Disaster Assistance, transferred to Recovery and Resilience, and moved that to the Office of Capital Access. So we'll be able to invest technology and expertise for a better customer experience. So what do we look now? These are some major changes we're leading from the ground up. Obviously getting our request for disaster declarations from the state, but we are reinventing how we lead from the ground up, working with our local officials. Obviously a state makes a request for a declaration, but we want to rely on that local expertise. So we will be embedding disaster recovery specialists across this country and regions so that we have folks embedded there. They will know the communities, they will know our diverse chambers of commerce, our economic partners, our small business resource partners. And when we send in the cavalry after disaster, they will help to guide that team to make sure that we are reaching everybody that we can, meeting customers where they are, and investing in those communities from the ground up. And also being very resilience focused. Kentucky, for example, had 2 major tornadoes just in the year and few months that I've been here. And we are, for the first time ever, in some of the hardest hit communities in the Appalachians, for example, moving people up from the hollers up to higher ground, replacing repetitive loss with economic opportunity, working with FEMA, our small business partners and the state. And we're using every tool at our disposal. We saw the historic wildfires in Colorado, where we used our existing authorities to be able to tweak the formula to make sure that we were delivering the capital that people needed, especially as we see some challenges to the supply chain, to make sure we can help people bridge that gap between the cost to recover, the cost to mitigate, and the resources they had available to them. And we're also doing some historic things. This past September, the administrator signed an order that gives us the ability to delay your first payment at 0 interest for the first 12 months for a disaster. So if you will need us for a disaster loan, you will not have to pay back that first disbursement for 12 months and 0% interest between them, recognizing the need in the post-COVID economy, but also to make sure that our small businesses have that breathing room to be able to manage that and provide some additional relief. Our goal is to make that permanent, and so we expect to have some news on that in the near future. Florida is a test bed for what we're doing to reinvent ourselves and meeting the customer where they are. So aside from disaster lending, we're now bringing the whole of SBA to the ground. Obviously at the front end, when it comes to preparedness and disasters and resilience, those regional recovery specialists will be communicating with our chambers of commerce, and we'll be reaching out to organizations like the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce and other diverse chambers to see how we can partner at the local level. We're going to be there for midterm and long-term recovery, so we will be putting other non-disaster SBA programs into the field and making sure that we're making that part of our recovery process. So we're not just doing lending, but bringing all of SBA programs to the table. During Pride Month, had the opportunity to go through our Midwest and talk to rural communities, talking about our efforts for DEI, but also the exciting news we've got with the Disaster Assistance for Rural Communities Act. The SBA threshold for a disaster declaration is only 25 structures, major damage, 40% uninsured. They can be businesses, they can be homeowners, they can be renters. But in those communities that are rural, where that is difficult, if they get a FEMA declaration for public assistance, but FEMA doesn't have enough damage for them to give money directly to disaster survivors. We now just require one, as long as that's in a rural census tract. And so those are some of the exciting things that we're doing. And our lending programs will be here for you if you should need them. But the most important factor, you can go to the next slide. The most important factor in determining how successful you will be in responding and recovering from a disaster is what you do for your own individual preparedness, but also how you prepare your business. And the first thing I will tell you to do is to get an insurance checkup. It's a good time. June 1st and the start of hurricane season and Pride Month is a good reminder. That's a time to check in on your insurance policies. Has anything changed? As you grow your business, you want to make sure that you're insured as you can be and that you're right-sized in that way. And a few other things to keep in mind. Assemble a team or some core folks in your business that know your operations and can provide important perspectives on planning for and responding to disasters. Having a plan, it doesn't have to be a robust plan, but at least have the concepts of what you will need. So that includes things like critical documents, storing them securely on the cloud, or make sure they are accessible. One of the things I've seen across the country is as people try to recover their business is sometimes they have lost those documents. We certainly will help you recover any of that any of those federal documents in a disaster, but have those as part of your continuity of operations. Get to know your vendors and your customers and have dialogues with them about how you will be able to get what you need in terms of your vendors, but also how your clients might be impacted. And identify the possible hazards that you might face. Unfortunately, across this country, I don't see any single community that doesn't have a hazard. Most have multiple hazards: flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes. And so making sure also that you can reach your employees and your customers, so having that contact information. So I will tell you, this is critically important. If we're generating this kind of prosperity and if we're building up our diverse businesses, we want to make sure not only that they prosper and that they thrive, but they can also be resilient in the face of disaster to come. So in closing, I will just remind you of a very stark statistic from FEMA, and that says that 25% of businesses are unlikely to come back after a disaster and typically close within the year. Now, those were pre-COVID numbers. So I think that unfortunately that statistic is probably more challenging and more dire now. So I really appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here in the Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience, but also tell you that we're investing in you. We're rooting for our LGBT chambers and our other diverse chambers, helping the smallest of the small, but making sure that you can survive and thrive in the as we face new challenges from climate. That's critically important to us. So thanks for the opportunity, and I'll be around if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Francisco. We truly appreciate it. And we also will drop a link into the chat so that people will know how to connect to your office. So thank you again. And then also, this is being live streamed to Facebook on the SBA and Public-Private Strategies Institute pages. And it will be there as well. So if you want to go back and reference any of this information, you'll be able to do so. Now we're going to turn to additional resources and information from the Invest in America plan and also the SBA. So the Invest in America, what it means in investing in America's small businesses. And basically, this plan is an agenda rebuilding the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not just top down. As a result of historic legislation, which includes the American Rescue Plan, also known as the ARP, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, also known as the BIL, the CHIPS and Science Act, also known as CHIPS, and the Inflation Reduction Act, also known as IRA. Now, all of these have huge impacts to small businesses, and we list a few here, but I want to highlight that one, it's an initiative to drive investment in the United States economy, aims to strengthen economic growth, job creation, and competitiveness. It collaborates with government agencies, businesses, and stakeholders, ensuring that business owners are able to find what they need and resources from contracting opportunities and how to get certified so that they can make sure their businesses are thriving. And additionally, it enhances infrastructure, technology, and workforce capabilities, creates opportunities for businesses, entrepreneurs, and communities, and of course, builds a thriving and resilient economy for all Americans. So we're going to go through each of the plans. And as you know, they all became law within 2021 to 2022. And so how you're able to get resources from each of these laws that are now enacted. So we're going to start with the American Rescue Plan. It's a comprehensive economic stimulus package that was signed into law by President Biden in 2021. It was historic legislation and provided $1.9 trillion in funding to address ongoing challenges and impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The plan aims to accelerate the nation's recovery, create jobs, support vulnerable communities, and provide relief to those who are most affected by the pandemic. And what you could do too is click on that link when you get the slide deck, and it will take you to a page that can provide you additional resources. But if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about the SBA Community Navigators Program. This program came from the American Rescue Plan. It was provided $100 million in grant funding, which was awarded to organizations in all 50 states and Puerto Rico. It closes resource gaps for small businesses in underserved communities. And basically it provided hub organizations which had established ties to local groups where they could priority focus on socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses, rural communities, women, and veterans to get resources connected to how their business can thrive. And to find out more and how to find a community navigator in your community, you could click on this link and go into the SBA website as well. Then there's also the State Small Business Credit Initiative. The American Rescue Plan reauthorized and expanded in the State Small Business Credit Initiative, and it provided $10 billion to small businesses and empower them to access the capital needs to invest in job creating opportunities as the country emerged from the pandemic. The SSBCI provides funds to states, the District of Columbia, territories, and tribal governments to promote American entrepreneurship, support small business ownership, and democratize access to capital across the country, including those in underserved communities. And again, when you get this slide deck, you're able to click on that link and it'll take you to additional support. And we wanted to make sure that people understood the emergency capital investment program that came from the American Rescue Plan, as well as the wide-ranging investments by the CDFI fund. And I know there were questions about what is CDFI, as Community Development Financial Institutions. And we made sure that we put a link into the chat for you as well, so that you can find out more about specifically CDFIs. Now, going into the Emergency Capital Investment Program, which is also known as ECIP, this is through the Department of Treasury, where Treasury closed and funded approximately $8.38 billion in investments in 2022. It supports those CDFIs and also MDIs, which are minority development institutions, and provides loans, grants, and access to small business and minority-owned businesses. To find out more about the program, we have a link that we're going to provide for you. And then going into the wide-ranging investments by the CDFI fund, it was $5 billion in new market tax credit allocations, $355 million under the bond guarantee program. And what we wanted to make sure you understood is how you can get some of those funds for your business. And so we have a link there that you're able to click on and learn more information. Now we're going to talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law, also known as the bill. On November 15, 2021, President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law, which made a historic investment of $550 billion in new funds for large infrastructure projects, supply chains, broadband, and drinking water. This expanded government contracts for small businesses. It empowered the Minority Business Development Agency, which is also known as the MBDA. And specifically, to learn more about the MBDA and resources that they offer for your business, you can go to mbda.gov. Additionally, the bipartisan infrastructure law created a pathway for good paying jobs. Investment in infrastructure led to job creation and will stimulate employment in the construction, broadband, and other related industries. We have provided some resources to help you get connected to opportunities offered through the bipartisan infrastructure law. You could go to bill.gov, builduplocal.org, which is a one-stop shop opportunity for minority businesses to learn more about the bill and how to connect in states about the opportunities. And then invest.gov and internetforall.gov, which is the broadband and TIA's portion of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Now the Inflation Reduction Act, known as the IRA. On August 16th, 2022, President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law, signaling a monumental step in addressing climate change and clean energy, solidifying American leadership, and spurring innovation to lower costs and advance the global clean energy economy. The IRA, with its $370 billion investment, aligns with the president's vision to establish the United States as a global leader in clean energy. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So what does the IRA do for small businesses? Well, it's designed to support small businesses during periods of inflation. It provides relief and assistance to mitigate the impact of rising costs, helps businesses maintain affordability and competitiveness. It supports workforce development and training programs, as well as promote innovation and technological advancements. And if you want to learn more about specifically how your business can have access and opportunities, we have a whole list of resources for you when you get this amazing slide deck tomorrow. Now, the CHIPS and Science Act. The CHIPS and Science Act stands for Creating Helpful Incentives to Produce Semiconductors, CHIPS, and Strengthening America's Strategic National Security Science Act, right? The CHIPS and Science Act. This legislation aims to address critical challenges in the semiconductor industry and advance scientific research and development here in the United States. The CHIPS component focuses on incentivizing domestic semiconductor manufacturing, promoting supply chain resilience, and reducing dependence on foreign resources or sources, The science component supports strategic scientific research and development, particularly in areas such as artificial intelligence, also known as AI, quantum computing, and advancing manufacturing. Here are some resources that you can use and how it's going to impact small businesses. The CHIPS and Science Act of 2022 has catalyzed significant investments in American semiconductor manufacturing. And to date, companies have announced nearly $50 billion in additional investments, bringing total business investments to nearly $150 billion. The small business opportunities here ensure semiconductor incentives support equitable economic growth and development. Recipients of funding must demonstrate significant investments in workers and communities, including opportunities for small businesses. And what you can do to find out more and how your business can be a participant in some of these programs is go to chips.gov, which is part of the Department of Commerce, or go to funding opportunities and research and development programs as well. Also, there's guides and templates to accompany the CHIPS incentive program, which is a commercial fabrication facility notice of funding opportunity that's open currently. We want to make sure that you're able to access these opportunities as they're available. So that's the great thing about this webinar. So we have a link here to connect you to that NOFA. And then also there's statement of interest instructions and pre-application in case you're interested in learning more about the CHIPS program. Now we're going to talk about the SBA resources that could be helpful to your business. We're going to talk about some that are access to capital focused, and then how the agency is improving its coordination and services. So SBA funding programs, as you can see, the SBA has a host of opportunities to engage and help your business, from loans, investment capital, disaster relief, which is what we talked about earlier with the Associate Administrator, Francisco Sanchez Jr., surety bonds, and grants. So there are several types of loan programs that the SBA has. And again, all this information is on the SBA's website. So you could definitely go there, if you're wanting to look at it immediately right now. But 7A loan programs are a group of SBA loans which guarantee portions of the total amount the capital interest rates, and limited fees. Once you decide to apply for a loan guaranteed by the SBA, you would then need to collect the appropriate documents for your application. And the process starts by working with your local lender within the SBA guidelines. And in order to find that, again, you could go to the SBA website and get connected there. Then there's the 504 loans, which is long-term fixed rate financing to purchase or repair real estate, equipment, machinery, or other assets. 504 loans are available exclusively through certified development companies, also known as CDCs. And we have a link here where you can connect and find one in your local area. And then there's microloans, which is the smallest loan program providing $50,000 or less to help businesses start up and expand. These microloans are available through certain nonprofit community-based organizations that are experienced in lending and business management assistance. Individual requirements vary. And again, you could go to the SBA website to find more information about this. There's also Lender Match. Now, what is Lender Match? It connects you to lenders by getting matched by potential lenders offering SBA-backed lending. So using Lender Match doesn't guarantee that you're going to get matched or be offered a loan. But what it does is provide you an opportunity and a resource to figure out options that are available. You can ask lenders about interest rates, minimum credit score, cash flow requirements, and other qualifying factors. Lender Match submits loan requests to participating community development financial institutions, also known as CDFIs, as we spoke about earlier, and small asset lenders. And again, how you can find out more information today, go to sba.gov/lendermatch. And now let's talk about investment capital. And I know I'm going fast, but there's a lot of great information. Find an investor for your business through a small business investment company, also known as the SBIC. They're licensed by the SBA. And so you have to make sure that they are licensed through the SBA to do this. An SBIC is a privately owned company that's licensed and regulated by the SBA. The investment in small businesses is in the form of debt and equity. The SBA doesn't invest directly into the small businesses, but it does provide funding to qualified SBICs, with expertise in certain sectors or industries. Those SBICs then use their private funds along with SBA guaranteed funding to invest in those small businesses. And as you see, there's an illustration about that there. Now, what are surety bonds? Surety bonds help small businesses win contracts by providing the customer with a guarantee that the work will be completed. Many public and private contracts require surety bonds, which are offered by surety companies. The SBA guarantees surety bonds for certain companies, which allows the companies to offer you bonds to small businesses that might not meet the criteria for others. And you can find out more about this and how it works, particularly through the SBA's website. And we just went through a great presentation by the Associate Administrator on Disaster Relief, but we have some links here to the information that he discussed. And so we'll make sure that you all have that as well. And then finally, we want to talk about Medicaid renewals. And everyone with Medicaid, just an FYI, you must renew your coverage this year. If you haven't done so already, you need to do this. You need to update your contact information with your state Medicaid or CHIP agency, responding to the Medicaid CHIP renewal form when it arrives to keep your coverage. And then consider other cover options if you are no longer eligible for Medicaid or the CHIP. Check if you can get coverage through your employer, through the Affordable Care Act marketplace, also known as the ACA, and healthcare.gov, or through Medicare. And with that, we're so grateful for all of our amazing speakers today. We could not have done this without all of you. And we thank you all for celebrating Pride and Caribbean Heritage Month with us. If you have any questions that are SBA related, please use this email address, answerdesk@sba.gov. And if you would like a copy of this webinar, like you did not register today, but you want access to the deck so that you could see all these amazing resources and get those links, please feel free to contact us at events@publicprivatestrategies.com. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us today and hope you have a fabulous week. Thank you all.